is all about Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things, questions, and markets related to Bitcoin. Little b for the currency and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. And I'm your host, Christine Lee, taking a look at our top stories. The International Monetary Fund saying it sees, quote, macroeconomic, financial, and legal issues with El Salvador's adoption of Bitcoin as legal tender. IMF spokesperson Jerry Rice saying the fund will meet with President Nayib Bukele to discuss the Bitcoin bill they recently passed and El Salvador's bid for a $1 billion loan. Meanwhile, Senator Elizabeth Warren of Massachusetts putting Bitcoin on trial at a Senate hearing on central bank digital currencies Wednesdays.
The grocery store could take in $100 in Bitcoin to pay for groceries, but by the end of the day, the Bitcoin could be worth only $60, in which case the store loses out. So these wild swings in value mean that Bitcoin is a terrible currency. In fact, that's why, except for criminals, most people are holding Bitcoin as a speculative investment, a way to make money rather than as a substitute for money, as a way to buy this week's groceries or to pay their babysitter.
Experts at the hearing also slamming stablecoins for being dangerous, as a sudden loss of confidence could lead to a massive dump of stablecoins, leaving remaining holders with significant losses. Nevertheless, experts suggesting a well-designed central bank digital currency could be created as a safer alternative. And finally, the Indian government may move away from its initial plan to ban Bitcoin in favor of classifying it as an asset class, according to a new Indian Express report, adding that the Securities and Exchange Board of India may regulate the cryptocurrency sector. A crypto regulation bill could be unveiled next month, and major exchanges like Crackdown and Bitfinex are already exploring entry into the country. So checking in on Bitcoin for a live look, the CoinDesk Bitcoin price XBX index right now trading at 36,800. Bitcoin is slightly up about 2% over the past 24 hours. The most reliable reference prices for institutions since 2014 are now published under the CoinDesk brand, trusted globally as the leader in crypto news, events, and data.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
So Bitcoin hitting highs above $38,000 earlier Thursday after the Bank for International Settlements' Basel Committee, the world's most influential banking regulator, gave banks the green light to hold Bitcoin and other digital assets. Specifically, the Basel Committee proposed that crypto assets should be split in two categories: assets eligible for treatment under existing frameworks, which would include tokenized assets and stablecoins, and those that are not, like Bitcoin and similar cryptocurrencies. The committee saying the latter poses, quote, additional and higher risks, and so banks with Bitcoin exposure should set aside equivalent capital to cover losses in full. The committee is inviting responses from stakeholders with a September 10th deadline for submission. And joining us now to discuss is Warwick Capital Chief Investment Officer Brian Tehako. Welcome, Brian, to the show.
Hi, Christine. Thanks for having me on.
Good to have you. So I was hoping you can comment on that Basel Committee. They're asking banks to increase capital requirements for Bitcoin exposure. They're cautioning against the risks of Bitcoin, but by acknowledging Bitcoin, they're sort of giving it legitimacy. Could you weigh in here?
Yeah, it's interesting. Everybody is trying to figure out the right route to go. And when you're dealing with something that is deemed potentially an asset or something deemed a currency, you're going to have these kind of bank type of issues. And I think what they proposed is great. If a bank's going to hold it, it's basically looking like they have to fully collateralize it, which is fine. The cryptocurrency market right now is the biggest issue is people being over leveraged. And I think they're just trying to be weighing on the cautious side. But it's great that they acknowledged it, and they acknowledged it as an asset.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned over-leveraged, and we saw that U.S. lawmakers are criticizing Bitcoin. In fact, Senator Elizabeth Warren was commenting on the volatility. Former President Donald Trump also made comments they finally agree on something, that Bitcoin is basically no good. Do you see headwinds for Bitcoin coming from governments?
You're going to see it from certain governments and certain not, where there's threats, right? There's two different angles. Is it a threat or does it help? When you talk about El Salvador in a situation like that, it's going to help. When you're talking about a country like the United States where the dollar is the dominant currency, it's going to hurt them. Senator Warren, I think, doesn't really understand the use of the Lightning Network and the use of a currency where you can do basically proof of stake versus proof of work. The fluctuation of the currency isn't going to be as sensitive to that. So there's a big difference between, again, is it a currency or is it an asset? That's where we're going to see the rub, right?
So going down that little line of thinking, you're saying that if you're at the grocery store and a grocer accepts some money, $100 or whatever for groceries, they don't have to worry that tomorrow the Bitcoin that they received is $50 tomorrow.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about that, right? And that's what Jack Mallers and the guys at the Lightning Network and everybody that's working on this at Strike, that's what they're trying to figure out, and where that volatility doesn't come into play. I've been kind of down this road numerous times with Bitcoin and going, okay, is it going to be a currency? Is it not? Is it going to be an asset?
Well,
is it going to be a store?
How are they doing that with the volatility, though? How are they going to manage that volatility?
It's instantly settled, right? It's instantly settled. So you're not going to have that volatility. You don't have to wait for the network. You don't have to wait 24 hours to basically redeem it or move it back. And again, as a store owner,
but could it actually, go against? We had a huge pullback in the crypto markets. Could it be something that could stabilize the 40% drop we've seen in the crypto markets in these past few weeks?
And everything is what's happening right now is we're in a adoption period, right? So it's the same thing as you go back to the tech days. You're going to have volatility when something is new. As time goes on and the market figures out where we are, that volatility will stabilize. Obviously, as traders, we like volatility, but again, if you're using it as a currency, that is the main concern. If you're using it as a store of value and we're trying to figure out the supply and demand of it, then that's where it's going to be a volatile product. But if you can smooth that out, you can smooth that out.
Fair enough. As the market matures, perhaps we'll see a bit more stability. But Senator Warren doesn't have a point in the sense that right now there is volatility, and that has to be addressed somehow. You mentioned El Salvador. They're the first country to accept Bitcoin as legal tender. And sources say India is warming up to crypto after attempting to ban it. So is this the seed that will grow into a field of countries accepting Bitcoin in the future?
Yeah, I think we look at it as the stallions out of the barn, right? It's out and it's running, and it's hard to people to kind of corral it and get it back in there. And I think when you start seeing it across, South American countries, they're looking at it as a way of financial freedom. And it's a way for them to fight their inflation and their currency. But you still have the issue of El Salvador is treating it, again, as a legal tender, as a currency, where India is coming out and saying we're going to deem it as an asset. Again, there's those are the two big differentials, right? The same thing in the U.S. We deem it as a commodity and we tax it that way, where El Salvador is saying, no, we're going to treat it as a currency, no tax, and you're able to transact with it. So we're fighting kind of two battles here, and everybody's trying to figure out how to classify it and where are we going to end up?
Speaking of battles, the IMF is talking about legal, financial, and economic issues that can arise for El Salvador in adopting Bitcoin. The IMF exerts considerable influence. El Salvador is seeking a $1 billion loan from the fund, basically. How do you expect these influences between dominant nations and developing countries playing out?
That's going to be very difficult, right? And it's going to be interesting to see where that comes down the road. And, maybe El Salvador doesn't care. Maybe they see a better future in Bitcoin versus they do being, backed by the IMF. That's going to be where it kind of comes down to play, and people are going to have to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. You also have
those are big risks, right? That's the financial freedom part, right? Those are the big risks, and people are going to have to make those decisions for their country.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have a chart that you brought on with us. It's the Bitcoin daily candle chart. Bitcoin is trading sideways between 30 and 40K. Do you anticipate a breakout further up or further down?
So basically on this daily chart, we use moving averages. If you can see, the purple line is our 5-day moving average. We got above that yesterday, which was a big deal. We've been in a bearish momentum chart, and currently we're trading just above the 20-day moving average at 36,500. If we can hold above that, we'll start to turn momentum a little bit up. And our next target would be to our 200-day moving average, which is the yellow line up above. So if we can push towards that, we can take a shot at 42,000. And this 36,500 is a big area for us to settle above today.
All right, Brian, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Christine.
All right, that was Warwick Capital CIO Brian Tehako. Coming up, checking in with Bitcoin's hash rate with Argo blockchain. Welcome back. Volcano-powered Bitcoin mining is going from a Twitter idea to state policy in El Salvador. Less than 14 hours after securing approval for a bill to make Bitcoin legal tender in the Central American nation, President Nayib Bukele directed El Salvador's geothermal company, La Geo, to let power-hungry Bitcoin miners plug into his country's volcanic resources, tweeting, "It should be very cheap, 100% clean, 100% renewable, zero emissions energy from our volcanoes. This is going to evolve really fast." All right, so joining us now to discuss is Argo blockchain CEO Peter Wall. Welcome to the show, Peter.
Hey, Christine, nice to be here.
Good to have you. All right, so your company signed on to the Crypto Climate Accord, which aims to make the cryptocurrency industry run entirely on renewable energy by 2025 and retroactively eliminate all past emissions by 2030. Is this volcano-powered mine something you would sign on to?
Look, geothermal is no joke. I mean, everyone, there's all these memes going around about volcano power. We've been getting notes from shareholders. Yeah, you got to go after the volcano. And it kind of sounds funny, but the thing is that geothermal is real. They've been mining in Iceland cryptocurrency for the last 10 years using geothermal. It just so happens now mining in warmer climates with the promotion or with the new technology around immersion mining is actually but a lot easier than it used to be when everything was air cooled. And the future of crypto mining is immersion. So I think it's real. I think it's interesting. If you're in need of good renewable power, why not look into volcanoes?
So you're going to give President Bukele a call maybe. But energy consumption concerns from Elon Musk seem to be what has triggered the pullback in the crypto markets that we're seeing right now. So how do you see those concerns being addressed going forward? Are you involved in some renewable energy resources and looking for energy sources that way?
Look, we've been very fortunate that when we originally started mining, we set up in Quebec, in Canada, where obviously, over 99% of the power is from renewable sources, from hydropower. And then we've now, decided that our next facility, the 200 megawatt facility that we're building in West Texas, is also going to be powered by renewables. Over 90% of the power coming into that facility will be from wind. And there's lots of other miners looking at Texas because of cheap renewable power there. So I don't think, we're alone in the industry. There's lots of folks looking for renewable power across North America. I think that's a good thing. I think we're going to see more and more renewable adoption happening. It was already happening. And it's not just Elon Musk, but, our retail shareholders, institutional shareholders that we talk about. Lots of people are interested in making sure that the future of crypto is clean and green as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, Christine, you've got initiatives like the Crypto Climate Accord, which you mentioned, which we signed. There's other folks looking at other ways to ensure that there's incentives for as much as possible for renewables, to be connected mm-hmm. to a cryptocurrency mining. So it's an interesting time.
Right, but switching topics, China is cracking down on mining operations throughout the country. Yesterday, we saw a precipitous drop in Bitcoin's global hash rate. We have a chart, actually, which is the global computing power to process Bitcoin transactions. And it went from 180 exahashes to 130 exahashes yesterday and continues to fall today to about 110. Does it make you flinch?
No, I think it's actually fantastic. What Bitcoin has shown again and again and again is that it is resilient. And yes, there's times like this where certain parts of China might get shut down, and they are getting shut down, namely, Christine, because of what we were just talking about, ESG concerns and the fact that most of these miners in most of these regions have been using coal power, and the Chinese government doesn't want that. But I think what's one of the brilliant things about Bitcoin is there's this difficulty reset that happens every 2 weeks, and things have a way of balancing them out. Every time we hear a halving coming, or every time there's an event like this, people are like, oh, well, what about the network? The network sorts itself out. It's just like a cork in the ocean. It kind of always pops up and sorts itself out. And that's the design of it. That's the brilliance of it. And for us as North American miners, this is a great thing. It means we're going to have more share of the network. And we're going to see more hash power coming to North America. There's going to be more innovation in North America. So I think all of these things are taken as a whole, are a good thing.
It seems a lot of these Chinese miners are looking to leave the country or at least sell some equipment. Are you in the market for some Chinese equipment?
We're always in the market for cheap, good machines, for sure. Obviously, Bitcoin mining machines prices have been very high in the last few months, given what's happened with the market. So prices are coming down. The dollar per hash rate is lower than it was 2 months ago, because it climbed very steeply, from January to March to April. So I think you're going to see lots of Chinese folks trying to, move to North America, get a deal on their machines. And again, that's good for miners like us.
And Argo stocks are fallen more than 50% from its all-time high in mid-February. Nevertheless, it's up 350% year to date and over 3,000 over the past 12 months. Does it take your breath away?
Look, I don't comment publicly on our stock. All I can say is that we think long term. Like anyone in the crypto space, if you're in it, you get used to the volatility. As Michael Saylor says, volatility equals vitality. And, at Argo, we think in quarters and years, not in days and weeks. So there's going to be times where things jump around, and that's okay. That's part of the fun. If you haven't got used to that, then crypto's, not the right place for you.
And your next earnings results?
Yeah, look, it's been a great year so far for us. I mean, we haven't sold one Bitcoin. Our hash rate, our profit margins our mining margins have been over 80% every time we've updated the market. Every month we put out an operational update every month. Our next one's coming out, at the end of July for June. And the year so far has exceeded our expectations, and we're extremely bullish on where we're going for the rest, the second half of this year and then into 2022.
Excellent. Peter, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Christine.
All right, that was Argo Blockchain CEO Peter Wall. That's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm your host, Christine Lee. Join us tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. in New York for First Mover, your first look at the day's global crypto news headlines. You're watching CoinDesk TV.